Hello my students, my name is BANIK and today we will be doing yet another poem. The poem is from the book First Flight and it's included in your pre-board syllabus. What's our poem about? Let's have a look at a picture first. So students, what did you get to see? Yes, it's fog. Fog that we get to see in the season of winter. We often tend to get up early in the mornings of winter just to see fog. Fog blurs the vision, but fog is so beautiful that no one can resist it. Yes, today we will be reading the poem Fog by CARL SANDSBURG. CARL SANDSBURG was born on January 8, 1878. He was an American poet. He has won the Pulitzer Prize for 3 times and he has a big volume of poetry called the Chicago Poems, which was published in 1916. Our poem Fog is from this volume of poems. So let's have a look at a picture of our poet. Alright. Students, why fog and what is fog? Fog is nothing but condensed water vapor. Water vapor are tiny droplets of water. When water vapor condenses, it turns to fog. Now what made our poet write about fog? One day our poet was going towards Grant Park, Chicago. There he went to take an interview of someone and there he had to wait for several minutes. He had nothing to do. He was getting bored. He looked up in the sky and saw that the fog has covered the entire city suddenly. And he had a book in his hands. The book had a Japanese form of poetry, which is called the haiku. Let's have a look what a haiku is. So students, a haiku poetry is a Japanese form of writing poetry, as I told you. It's a poem that is 3 lines long and you have to make sure that it has a right number of syllables. That is, the first line would be having 5 syllables, the second line would be having 7 and the third line would be having 5 syllables. So basically a haiku is a very short poem of 3 lines. So my dear students, haiku has 3 lines but our poem is of 6 lines. So why am I talking of haiku? Because our poet had the Japanese poetry book in his hand, he thought of writing similar to it. That is a very short poem. He thought to write it like an American haiku. Alright? Okay. Now students, you must have seen clouds. Clouds, have you ever tried to find shapes in the clouds? Yes, we all do. I'll show you pictures so that your concept is clear. Yes, my students, pareidolia. Pareidolia is a phenomenon of seeing shapes in nature. Seeing faces in inanimate objects is common and it has a name. The name is pareidolia. It's a psychological phenomenon that causes the human brain to lend significance and facial features in particular to random patterns. So, we often tend to see shapes in nature. This process is known as pareidolia. Our poet also he imagined the fog in kind of a shape. He saw a shape in the fog. What's that? We'll know it. Let's start our poetry. Yes, so here's our poem. You can see it's only of 6 lines. A very short poem, a very easy poem as well. Let's start the poem. Fog. The fog comes. The fog comes on little cat feet. Little cat feet. That's what I was talking about. Finding shapes in nature. The poet has found a shape in the fog. And what's the shape? The shape is of a cat. He is imagining the fog as a cat. See students, there's no end to human imagination. Imagination is vast and it has no end to it. I'm standing here, but I can imagine myself in the United States now. Can anyone stop me from imagining? No. Here's the beauty of imagination has been shown in this poetry. So, the fog comes on little cat feet. The poet is comparing the fog to a cat. This form of comparing or this form of identifying something is known as metaphor, right? You all know that. On cat feet. Cat feet. What does that mean? how does a cat walk? Very slowly, stealthily, isn't it? It walks like it has come to steal something. Let's see how a cat walks and how a fog moves. It's very predictable that the poet compares both. Movement of both are very same. Both are white in color and both moves very slowly. Hence the comparison. Alright? It sits looking. The fog is seeing something. And what it is saying? Over harbor and city. It is having a watch over the harbor. What is a harbor? Harbor is where ships are sheltered. Where ships are kept for shelter, that is called the harbor. So the fog, it sits over the harbor and keeps looking at the harbor and the city. And this imagery is very much similar to a cat which is sitting somewhere and only gazing at something else. Okay? The fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches. Haunches means to sit with knees bent. You can imagine a cat which is sitting with its knees bent. This is known as haunches. So the cat, the fog, it comes, it sits on haunches and then it moves away. A kind of a movement is shown in the poetry. See, comes, the poet comes, it sits and it moves on. Coming, it comes, it sits and it moves on. The movement of the fog is very similar to the movement of a cat. A cat also enters our house. It does whatever it wants to do and then it goes away. We don't even get to know when the cat came and when the cat went away. Right? The movement is so unpredictable. The cat's movement has no sounds. It makes no sounds. And the fog is also same. Fog has no sound. Like a snake. A snake comes and goes away. We don't even get to know what happened. Similar is the case with the cat and the fog. So here's basically the imagination of the poet is shown and the beauty of imagination. That is how a fog's movement can also be compared to a cat. There are more dimensions to it. Like there's the beauty of nature is also shown. What is nature? Can we control nature? No. Could we control the fog? No, we could not control the fog. The fog came whenever it wanted to. It stayed for a while and it again moved away. No one can control the fog. Nature has myriad ways of expressing itself and we cannot control nature. Nature is so beautiful and nature has its own way to exhibit itself. So the beauty of the nature is shown here. The beauty of the imagination is also shown here. Right? And there's a theme of transformation as well. You can see first it's a fog, then it becomes a cat, again it becomes a fog and it moves away. So basically three things I've told you, that is the theme of nature, theme of change, theme of transformation and the beauty of imagination. All these things are here in our poetry. You can see the poem is very short, right? Hardly 6 lines are there. The lines are also short, hardly 3 or 4 words in each line. Okay, and it is a free verse. You can see there's no rhyme scheme as such. Comes, fit, looking, city, haunches. So no rhyme scheme is also not there. It's a free verse. It's a short poem. This shortness shows the transitory nature of the fog. That it comes suddenly, it stays for a while and it goes away. Right? Like a cat does no harm when it enters the house, the fog is also doing no harm. It comes, it does its work and it goes away. Okay? So my dear students, let's recapitulate our entire poetry so that the concept becomes clearer. So here we can see it's actually a cloud, but if we imagine it like a fog, we can see the shape of a cat in it. Right? So the poem is a proof that how brilliant human imagination can be. We can make up magical creatures like mermaids also, right? We also think about mermaids and other things. So why not this? Sandberg's imagination is just like that. He's comparing a common weather phenomena like a fog to that of a cat. Alright? More specifically, students, we can say that he thinks that the way the fog covers a place is very much similar to the way a cat silently enters a room. It makes sense also, right? Just like a cat sits on the walls or window sills looking over, the fog also settles down on a city and watches it. It doesn't trouble anyone. It sits and moves on to the next destination silently, just like a cat. Okay, students, so let's now discuss about some probable questions that you may face. The first question could be, to what has the fog been compared to, or what are the similarities between the fog and cat according to the poet? Here we'll talk how they have been compared. We'll say both of them are white, both sit and look, both come slowly, both go slowly, and both have little feet. Fog doesn't have any feet, but the kind of movement they both have, they can be compared. A very important question could be about the literary device that has been used is the extended metaphor. Students, an extended metaphor is a kind of comparison between two unlike things. What are unlike things there? The fog and the cat. They are not similar, but they have been compared on the basis of some similarities. Now, if this kind of a comparison goes throughout the poem, this is called an extended metaphor. Now, let's move to the long answer questions. Theme of change. The theme of change here, we'll talk about that the fog is the force of change in the poem. In the first line, we can see it's fog. Next, it becomes a cat. Lastly, it again becomes a fog. This transformation is the theme of change. We don't have any control over it. It's nature who will decide when to come, when to go. This is the theme of change. Next, the theme of nature, obviously, is the power of imagination that has led to the beautification of nature in this poem. Nature is very beautiful, but nature does according to its own wish. Nature is unpredictable and we cannot control nature. Nature has its own way of manifesting itself. Lastly comes summary and central idea. In the summary, you will talk about whatever you have understood in the poem, but in the central idea, you have to talk about the themes as well. Summary and central idea are not same, students. Summary means reading the lines and then explaining, and central idea would mean reading between the lines and explaining. So I guess now your problem of the questions is solved. So we have discussed the entire poem. We have discussed the probable questions. We have discussed about the form of the poem. I hope all your doubts have been cleared. We'll meet you soon again with another topic. Till then, keep reading and stay home, stay safe, and yes, please read the text on your own so that you can get the meaning of the poem quite nicely. Thank you.